Hello everyone, it is Peter Sam, the No Gauge Engine here, and I am back. For this shit, whatever this is, about a week ago, I watched a tier list ranking of all of the first 15 stories from Victor Tanzig's Stories of Sodor. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to rewatch all of season 1 and we're going to do it. Fuck it. I'm going to rewatch all the first 15 and we're just going to see how I like them. So, that being said, let's dive right on in. Sit back, relax, grab some snacks, and I'm going to talk to you about my thoughts on Season 1 of Stories of Sodor. So the first one we've got here is branch lines. Now, branch lines, I don't know how to say this, but it's not a good start. Let's just be fair now. It's going right into D tier. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's unfocused. There's like 3 plots going on. Barely any of them are interesting. The Eric one I like, but the other 2 aren't really for me. I don't really like them. It's kind of disappointing because I feel like if Victor had not rushed the Bulstrow plot so much and maybe shortened the one about Jeffries, I think that could have actually improved upon the episode. But all in all, I think it's very just all over the place and it makes for a very uncomfortable viewing because of that. So next up here we have Carriages. Carriages going straight into B tier. I think it's pretty good. It's a more realistic take on the story of Breakvan, which improves it massively because the ramifications of that are a lot more impactful to Douglas and all the other engines, and I think just showing that side of it is very, very interesting. There's some info dumping, and you're going to see me talk about this phrase a lot, info dumping. It's when you take a lot of information and you pile it on throughout an episode. It's done a lot in Stories of Sodor, but I think here it's not really as bad as it is in other episodes. I feel like, considering it's at the end of the season, it is a better form of info dumping. It's sort of what you'd expect from Victor, and everything apart from that I think is pretty good. I love the narrow gauge segment though. Andreas is such a funny character. I love it to bits. Yeah, he's one of the best. Next up is Cows. Now, Cows is just amazing. Cows is above Carriages in my opinion, but I still think it's a B tier. If there's one episode that I think is could be considered the humorous episode of the season, it's definitely this one. Cows is funny as shit. Diesel and Colin in this episode, oh my god, what a duo. There are some monotonous parts because all it is just engines running into cows and being stopped by them, and that is very monotonous, but it still is pretty interesting because the humour sort of clashes that and sort of improves upon the episode, so the episode isn't entirely ruined, and I still think it is better than Carriages, and it's better than Branch Lines for definite, but yeah, it can be pretty monotonous. I think that's the only gripe I have with it, and it is kind of a big gripe because if you're just doing the same thing over and over again for 20 odd minutes, it can be a bit boring, but I think the humour saves this episode indefinitely. And next up is Fire. I'm going to put this at the low end of a B tier. I don't think it's quite as C. I don't think it's quite as poor. I think the new character of Mickey here, as you can see in the thumbnail, he is one of the most interesting characters, I think. He sort of becomes a device, I think, in the sense that, you know, when engines crash, he's just there, just because reasons. But all in all, I think the episode is great. It's such a good way of showing that not all of the Nor'easters are good and not all of the LMS are bad. It turns the tables on that idea, and I think that's pretty good, and it just goes about this feud in a very different angle to what the previous 2 episodes in the season did, Percy and Legality, which I think, yeah, just makes it a very pretty good one, in my opinion. Not much to say apart from that. It's what you think of when you think of Stories of Sodor. For me, I think of this episode and Ghost, which I'll be talking about now. Oh, in a minute. Fire is just your typical Stories of Sodor episode. I think it was one of the first I watched. I think I watched Visitor, and I think I watched this one afterwards because I had no idea what the timeline was then. I just found it in my feed and I was like, oh, okay, I'll click on this one. But yeah, Fire is just your typical episode. Nothing too impressive, but nothing wrong. Next up is the Season Grey. It is just the Season Grey, and it's going in decent. Now I'm joking. It's going in S tier. Ghost is so fucking good. it is so great at just pulling you in. It just has that spooky atmosphere. The voice acting is pretty good. Still manages to have a funny moment with Mr. Zorro when he's like, there is no way he's going to go for that. And then Mr. Zorro is like, are you out of your blooming mind? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to speak to a ghost. It's pretty funny. I enjoy it a lot. Ghost is so good at being so eerie, and just this unknown force that's terrorizing the island is so intriguing. It's great. And the best parts are left up to your imagination, because they even speculate if this is even Arthur here that crashed, you know? And while most people consider it to be, there is that doubt you can still have. And there's the unknown things in the coach windows that the lady looked in, and she freaked out and was sent to an insane asylum. That's freaky. And it builds up very well. It's like Percy sees it, and then Edward sees it, and the lady looks through the window and she gets fucked up, and then Reginald almost hits it, and then they figure out a way to get rid of it. It's a very good build up and climax, I think. And it's just, yeah, there's nothing other to say about it other than iconic, you know? It's just iconic. It is. Like, Stories of Sodor is iconic in itself, but, like, this is especially so. Really, really great. Now we are moving on to Goods. Now, Goods is a C tier, very problematic. It's very chill and very laid back, despite there being a few, like, action scenes, like Peter pulling Edward, but it seems to be just very chill. Peter is very, very bland. Like, there's nothing to know about this guy other than he is strong, and he pulls Edward and very long trains. That's great. Where's the, character development? We get he's nice, and that's it. Like, he gets developed later on, which is good, but, like, here, he's not exactly the best. And Eric, the poor fucker, gets introduced in the last 5 minutes, and it does exactly the same thing. Can you see the problem? Do you see how, like, this is pretty problematic? We get he's a bit, like, thick, but other than that, it's not the best, is it? Really, like, when you think of series greats, this isn't one that pops into your head. And I think, again, like with Branch Lines, it's very scattered in focus, but I think the Eric saves it. As much as he is sort of bland and undeveloped, he does save it, because, it's Eric, innit? Like, who was that English? How you not gonna like him? That's what I was trying to say. I'm so fucking, like, not with it today, honestly. I'm as problematic as this episode today. And now we're moving on to Jinxed. Jinxed is very close to being C tier, but I'm going to give it B tier, because as much as it does take from Tugs, it does have an interesting plot, let's be real. And there is no need for a B plot for this one because of that interest. Alright, sometimes you have these episodes with B plots where you have them with little side stories that don't really matter. This one doesn't need it. It really doesn't. And I think that's good. I think that's a very good thing. There's a better form of info dumping here. Like with Carriages, this one introduces the MSR properly, so there's a lot of information to take in, but I think because it's the MSR, and because everyone just, like, naturally has heavy interest in that railway, because no one really knows what the fuck was going on there, it is a pretty good form of info dumping, so it's not outwardly that bad, unlike one we'll get to later, where the info dumping is awful and takes, like, 10 minutes to get into. Yeah, we'll get onto that one, don't worry. But yeah, Jinx, as an episode, it's a bit accident heavy, I find. Like, there's a lot of accidents in this one. There's a lot of crashes, and I don't know how I feel about that. Crashes are something that should be very, very powerful. Because the series is realistic, right? So it's got to be very tragic. But there's, like, a derailment. There's, like, Falcon dangling over the edge of a cliff and almost losing his life. And I think Peter Sam gets his cracked funnel in this one, does he? Or in the next one of the two. But either way, yeah, it's so accident heavy. It's like, I think that just takes from the episode, the realism of it, because of the jinx and obviously the whole, like, supernatural and spooky side of it, I guess you could call it. But yeah, it all weakens the episode. I would have preferred if they'd done more, like, silly antics that don't really have too much impact, like the derailment, the drain pipe with Peter Sam. I feel like more stuff like that and less stuff with the big crashes would have really helped here. And the next one is Legality, the second episode of the season. I went into this one thinking I was really going to like it, and to be honest, I really do. I think it is a favourite, but it is pretty problematic. I'm going to put it above Goods, just for the simple fact that I think it was one of the first ones that I watched, and so I was sort of like very attached to it because of that. Legality proves upon the episode Thomas in Trouble because it has that realism aspect. You know, Thomas in Trouble was trying to go for that realism and the law side of everything. But this takes it and then just takes it to fucking level 1,000 because you've got these laws now about regulating fuel tankers and shit. To be honest, I'm with Colin. I think that is pretty interesting. I think that's pretty cool. And I like that aspect of it. And we just get to see more of the characters and the LMS banter, if you will. I think it would have benefited from a side swap, though. In the first episode, Percy down here, you know, the Nor'easters are won over on the LMS. So in this one, I would have preferred if the LMS was won over on the Nor'easters, just to make it more equal. I get they do that in literally the next episode, but I think, you know, having the first 2 episodes outwardly demonstrating the rivalry and the LMS and the Nor'easters are just as bad as each other type thing, you know, the Steamies versus Diesels thing from season 8, yeah, that would have really, I think, bumped it up to a B, which I would have happily done. But yeah, for now, it's a high C. Pretty unfortunate because it is a favourite of mine, but you get what you get when you're a pretty samey episode because, you know, the plot's really the same. The LMS are bad, the Nor'easters are good, yada yada yada. But it does introduce some new aspects, and I like it because of that. Now on to Luck. Now, where did I put Luck? I think Luck's about right at the edge. Yeah, right at the edge of a C tier, I think. I think that's where I put it. Now, Luck is barely below Jinxed. I think because, let me just read from what I have on my notes here. Bob is useless, alright? We know Bob Mackenzie. Yeah, we never met him before. How are we supposed to care? Like, Bob is useless. That's the first thing I wrote down, and it's the only thing that I think is, like, really, like, shocking in this episode. Like, who is Bob? Do we care about Bob? We get that he likes, not that he likes kids. That is not what I was trying to say. For fuck's sake, I told you I can't speak today, and I'm just really losing it, and I don't know why. I think I'm just, like, having a mental break. Has a wife and kids. He has a family. That's all we get about him. And that the engines care for him. Why not show that? Show it. You know, have him in a couple of scenes beforehand. Extend the episode runtime. Have him in a couple of scenes. Make us care about this fucker. Because I don't. It's like me in Locomotives killing off Neil in the first episode. You're not supposed to care about him. That was purely a device aspect to show how dark the series is. Like an inception of flashbacks, right? I didn't realise I was in the second flashback, right? It just skipped from the standard gauge shit to the MSR shit, and I didn't even realise I was still in a flashback. It was, yeah, that was pretty bad as well. I was in an inception of flashbacks that was very confusing, to be fair. And once I worked it out, I was like, oh yeah, I'm still in a flashback, aren't I? Wow. But I'll tell you what, it is sweet as shit. Having Stanley released of his Jinx and that ending, man. That ending, the music, the narration, the sweet tone makes me cry, alright? I want to pull some shit like that off. Which, by the way, I should have mentioned at the start. I am partly doing this so it can benefit me, my series called Locomotives, just so I can see what works and what doesn't. And because we're going for the same sort of thing, like the realism, but mine's a bit darker and his is a bit lighter, so that's... But yeah, I'm just looking for stuff to critique, stuff to praise, and stuff I can magpie into my own shit. Not like story beats, but like more tonal things and like events. That's sort of why I'm doing this. But yeah, Luck itself has such a sweet ending, but it's not going to save it from a C tier because honestly, that inception of flashbacks and it is kind of info dumping. It's a smart version of info dumping, but it is still info dumping. But yeah, Luck is it's all right. It could be better and it could be worse, but like for now, Luck stays right there. So now we have Mainline, and I'm going to put it right between Fire and Jinxed up here. Mainline does cap off some stories from branch lines and sort of like shuffles them to the side. It's like, I fucked up in branch lines, let's just clear some shit up in main lines and then like get on, because we forget about that. That's sort of what I think this episode was going for. I think it's still a bit unfocused because it is capping off those stories, and because branch lines were so unfocused, it is naturally gonna do that. But I think there are more fun scenes, honestly. I think it is a bit forgettable though. Like, I think I watched this like the other day and I can barely remember anything what happens apart from what's in my notes. I think there was like the baby, wasn't it? Thomas Eric Galindez, that kid, and nothing else. I can't remember anything else apart from that. Sometimes you're just going to forget things, aren't you? Mainline's solid, definitely. It's not as problematic as anything down here, but it is worthy. it is worthy of being in B tier, I think. Okay, so moving on now, we're going to go to Passengers, and Passengers is a solid A, I've got to say. The Gordon versus Reginald plot is very good. Anyone can write for Gordon. I don't care how shit you are at writing episodes, everyone can write for Gordon. It's not that difficult, and Victor proves it, because oh my god, he is so entertaining, and especially with Reginald, Reggie boy, whatever you want to fucking call him. It's very entertaining, those bickering fuckers. It links to Railway series a lot, which I do like as well. And that cliffhanger end is very effective, I think. But just the episode as a whole is a vast improvement, considering how early it is in the series. I think it's like the 4th episode, right? Considering that the 3rd episode is here, the 2nd episode is here, and we all know where that 1st episode is going. This is pretty impressive. I'm going to applaud Victor right now. Victor, if you're watching this, you're probably not. Oh well. You did good on this one. Very impressed. Very impressed. Now, speaking of Percy, this is the next one, and I don't think I need to tell you that this is going like right at the back end of C. It copies from Tugs, like line for line. It is copy and Tugs. I know it's the 1st episode and everything, but the 1st episode is when you should be like setting the groundwork. I guess it sort of does that. I'm sort of confused as to why Toby's on Sodor before Percy is, considering he has a number 7 and Percy has a number 6. It doesn't matter, but like it's just the little things as well. Like the fact that it's just beat for beat, isn't it? There is a very big pacing problem here. There's a rushed second half, and the first half is way too fucking slow. If you balance those out a bit more, and you'd have Thomas wondering about how to help Percy for a longer time, I think that would have helped the episode. But let's be real, the LMS are the most entertaining part, just as the those other boats were in Tugs. I forget their names, to be honest. No idea. Percy goes here. It's just a copy of Tugs. Nothing else to say apart from that. What do you expect? I don't know, Peter Sam. I don't know what you expect, you fucking weirdo. Now on to Quarantine. Quarantine. It's pretty good, I have to say. It is pretty good. I am going to put it... I can't. There you go. I'm going to put it in A. It is a very focused episode. Like, considering this was not focused, and that was only like, what, 5 episodes apart? And this is really focused. You can see the improvements. Vast improvements. There is funny moments with Mongrel McCall himself. Very good funny moments. It's not as funny as Cow's, even though it is higher, but I still think this is worthy of some humour. It has some humour. I'm going to say that. There's a mix of light and serious tones in this one as well. The tonal stuff is done very well as well. But yeah, all in all, I think this is just a very good episode. Diesel, again, makes the episode. LMS are the funniest shit in the world, and you cannot tell me any different. Alright? It's a solid A tier. It deserves to be there. I think Quarantine is very, very fun. Scrap is up next. We all know where this one's fucking going. It's D. It's right at the bottom. I don't get people who like this episode. I see people that like it, and I question it, because it is just an info dump, isn't it? Like, it's an info dump of an episode. It takes like 5 minutes to get to the actual meat of the episode. That's problematic, considering that this starts with like some interesting Donald and Douglas shit. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with my voice today. Oh my god. Donald and Douglas scenes that are very interesting, relate to the deputation. Great. This spends 5 minutes talking about non-faceless and faceless and Scrap and like the Railway series books or something, and Whiff's glasses. Like, do I care? I met Whiff 5 minutes ago. Why do I care? Yeah, just very awful. That bridge collapse as well. That is the dumbest shit I've ever seen. Sorry, Victor, but like, I get it, right? It was trying to be cool, but like, oof, you oofed on this one a bit hard, didn't you? Take from Ghost's book. Make the bridge collapse unseen. I don't know. Do something like off screen or something. Have the bridge collapse before we see the iron frame breaking, because then it won't look stupid. But yeah, and then there's too many plots as well. I swear there's like 5 or some shit. Like, if you go into that episode, count the plots, please, because I think there's about 5, and none of them I care about. Not one. Not a single one. 0 plots I care about. This is like the shit episode of the season. This is what lets the season down. Well, maybe this as well, but like, it still had promise. This has no promise. This is just an info dump and then a stupid bridge collapse. Sorry, Victor, but like, that is what it is. I can't apologise for it. It's awful. All right, you make some cracking ones up here, right? But this is not prime Stories of Sodor cuisine that I'm after. This is the prime Stories of Sodor cuisine I'm after. This is not. Alright, we're at the last episode, and I'm going to try and speak English this time. Hopefully I can. Sting goes right in between Passengers and Quarantine. Sting is so entertaining. Joey kills it in this episode. Joey is just a dime. Sting has a bit of a wobbly pacing. That's like the one thing I want to say about it. It's a bit iffy around the edges. Could have used I don't know why I've got a lisp now, with some, just a bit of minor tweaking, and I think that would have been like an S, definitely. The Sting scenes are the best part. The scenes that the episode is named after are definitely the best part. Seeing those criminals get caught is just such a satisfying, entertaining thing. However, again, another little thing. I think the thing that would say this was a B plot. All right, because it gets very heavy at the end, with the arrests and stuff. And I think it just could have used with some minor tweaking, and I think that would have been a perfect S. I think that would have maybe gone above Ghost, which is impressive. And again, with Passengers as well, I think both of these, with some minor tweaking and some little work done on it, going through the scripts again, maybe adding some scenes and taking some scenes out. Well, you don't need to take scenes out for this one, but maybe for this one, definitely could have been an S, definitely. So now that we're done, I'm going to go through the episodes one by one. Again, Scrap is in last place for obvious reasons. It's an info dump. It is just a stupid bridge collapse, and there is nothing interesting. Branch Lines has way too many plots that are all unfocused, and they're all shifting, and it's just a mess, a hot mess that needed a lot of work done to it. Percy is just tugs, but with engines. I mean, it is, isn't it? Goods has two new characters. Both are so underdeveloped. And I think the plot suffers from unfocusedness as well, if that's a word. Legality was one I was hoping I'd like. Unfortunately, I think I'm just very impartial to it. It is very interesting, but I just think it would have improved from a side swap, definitely. LMS being the protagonists of this one would have definitely helped this one, I think. Luck has a sweet ending, but it's just an inception of flashbacks. Most of the episode is a flashback. Nothing actually happens in Luck. Jinxed suffers from way too many crashes, and I think there's a time waste as well. There's wasting time with Falcon and Stanley going down the line, which again is another form of info dump, just showing the line off and then just wasting everyone's time. It just takes away from the story, I think. Main line is main line, isn't it? It just caps off branch lines a bit, and then there's a baby born. It's alright. Nothing harmful. Fire, your quintessential Stories of Sodor episode. It's just your quintessential basic standard. Nothing too heavy, nothing too bad. Stories of Sodor episode. Pretty entertaining, I think. It's alright. Carriages does some info dumping, so that's obviously going to move it down a bit. But it is a good form of info dumping, and I just think it is a better version of Breakvan, showing the guilt side of it, which I hope to emulate in Locomotives. Cows is funny as shit. Enough said. Quarantine, still funny. The tonal stuff is very interesting, and it is very, very good at doing that. Sting, very good Sting scenes. Every scene is entertaining. I just think with minor tweaks, it could possibly beat Ghost. Passengers, again, with minor tweaks, could have beat Ghost. The Gordon versus Reginald shit, amazing. And then finally, in first place, of course, Ghost. Just so good with the atmosphere. Amazing. And that rounds it off. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and now I've got to find a way to put this all together. So pray for me. If you're saying this, then this clearly was not a waste of time, and I actually did something, and I made it look entertaining. But either way, I'll see you in the next video. Probably Locomotives episode 4, hopefully. But I'll see you then. Bye-bye.